Alright, so this is my first WoW video, I think. Figured I would make this a bit of a how-to in terms of speedrunning and just improving your execution of individual encounters. The purpose of this video is multifaceted. Those who are looking to speedrun or learn how to speedrun alongside their guild, hopefully this will give you some ideas on how to improve your times for clearing a raid instance. In this case, it'll be Blackwing Lair, BWL. The good old BWL. This is also going to contain some basic information for those who are just looking to maybe improve their personal performance or improve their individual execution of a particular encounter, or raid execution, whichever comes first. So I went ahead and skipped ahead because I did this recording a while before we began. Now this is for the guild Rampage on Fairbanks, and it took us a little while to get started since we were going over some new tactics. This is, however, a bit of an old recording, as you can actually see. You see the little date here. So this is a few weeks ago. So I believe this is when we're going to be logging in. Now, I main a warrior, of course. This is not my only account, but this is my main account with my main character on it. This, once again, is a speed run. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that when we logged out inside the raid. The reason we logged out inside the raid here is mainly because a lot of people have been dispelling on Fairbanks, so we're very, very careful about that. We get everybody into the raid and ready. Then we just have everybody log out until everyone's 100% prepared. Ah, yes, and I forgot. We actually did a few last-minute buffs here. Forgive the bit of a horrendous UI here. I've not really gotten around to sprucing it up. Now, the first encounter, of course, is Razorgore. Everyone knows about it. I'm going to go over how we position, though, and the types of buffs and materials we use. Because I main a warrior, I'm primarily going through this with a warrior perspective, but there will be times where I touch on other classes. So forgive me if I leave out a particular class or anything like that, but if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments and I'll get to them. Or you can look me up on Discord, you can look me up on Twitch, you can look me up in-game, whatever your heart desires. So a bit of history here. My guild, Rampage, we're a hardcore guild on Fairbanks. We have multiple raid teams, both of which are very high performance. A lot of people have asked me before because, you know, they see me wearing the rank 14 gear. They see a lot of people wearing it and they think that's a requirement. That's not quite the case. We're just very try-hard, very sweaty. So one of the reasons I wear this rank 14 and rank 13 gear, even though it's not the best pure DPS setup, is because I'm not focusing on pure DPS. I'm focusing on survivability to offset it, hence my HP being as high as it is. So, you know, fully buffed, I have over 9k HP easy. And this is without using every possible buff. Unfortunately, we have to be careful with buff caps. You can see up here, a lot of buffs up there, but I do have a weak aura tracking it. So we actually use weak auras and add-ons to remove it. So we're going in here for the pull. You'll notice we all sapper here. That's just to kill these mobs like as quickly as humanly possible. Technically, you don't need to do that as long as you get somebody in control of the orb. Now you'll notice I have here, I am not using two particular buffs, the Juju Might and then also, or rather Juju Power and the Roids. The reason for that is because, once again, we're being careful with the buff caps, with all the perks, all the procs, all the healing procs and personal procs. I just don't want to hit that cap. Now, what I am using is a Zanza Flask. We start out with speed at this portion of the run, and then we swap to HP later. That's because damage isn't too intensive right now, and we want to focus on movement to get into each area as quickly as possible. You're also going to notice, this is both for ranged and melee. We don't really pop cooldowns. I pop cooldowns during the initial mobs here. However, we don't actually pop cooldowns during the fight itself, during Razorgore when he's active. The reason for that is because we're not going to have them up for when we need them later. We also, just as a note on positioning, we tend to position based on odds and evens in this particular encounter. We kill everything that comes out of the spawn points. We do not kite, we do not CC them, we just outright kill them. You'll notice if you look at our comp, we have a very melee heavy comp. I have watched a few videos, but they usually don't go over why that is. The reason we use a very heavy, I'm just gonna pause it right now, the reason we use a very heavy melee comp, a lot of warriors, rogues, is because we don't have the kind of downtime that other classes have, but we still bring very high amounts of DPS. You're probably noticing I don't have DPS meters on right now. It's because I don't care about my personal damage necessarily. I just want to make sure that I'm staying alive and I'm doing what I need to do in terms of my rotation, and not pulling aggro and all that. But yeah, warriors, for example, bring tons of cleave, whirlwind, cleave the actual ability, single target damage. Our cooldowns aren't particularly encumbersome. And the fact that we are instant DPS, meaning we don't really cast anything, we just run in, smash our targets to death. It just is very, very good for a speedrun environment, so long as the fight is not anti-melee, so to speak. There are going to be certain encounters in AQ, for example, coming up that definitely are not so friendly to melee, and thus you have to be extra careful. So Dragonkin, we essentially just chase them up here. Dragonkin have a tendency to run, from what we've noticed, to either the orb or to Razorgore, whichever one's closer. And once they get there, they'll actually activate. They've basically saved their threat up until that point. So my goal there is to just do as much damage as possible to make sure it doesn't touch the person on the orb. We then drag it away from the orb. I'll pause it next time I get a chance. But we drag it away from the orb for Razorgore, specifically so that nobody accidentally clicks the orb. That has happened before because it has a bit of a hitbox. And so the orb up there on the podium, you can accidentally click it. And it has happened before. Never wipe to it, of course, but it causes a lot of panic because then we have to suddenly adjust and get the next person in the rotation back on there. Alright, so one important thing to note here for warrior responsibilities specifically, you'll notice I keep track of sunders here. I keep it here. It's like all over the place. That is because sunders are very important. If you are bringing a heavy melee comp, or even just several melee, all it takes is the warriors hitting their sunder buttons once, and usually that's enough to get it max sunder. You want that on there because that will instantly increase the damage of your entire raid, excluding, pure elemental classes. Alright, so my first goal, of course, is always to hit sunder. And often if I notice the sunder is not going up fast enough, I call it out, and I hit the sunder button more than once. I'm actually known to spam sunder if nobody else is doing it, specifically because it's beneficial to the raid. And I think that's an important thing to note here. Whenever you are trying to improve your execution on an encounter, your raid's execution of the encounter, or your execution of a clear time, trying to get those speedruns going, it's really important to manage your buffs and the debuffs you put on each individual target. Warriors, hit your sunder. Just trust me, your raid will love you for it. Even if they don't all praise your name, deep down they know what you did. People will be looking at the logs and they'll say, man, this guy is he's making the raid's damage so much better. Now, of course, you'll notice I pop my cooldowns here. That's because I know they'll be up before we actually need them. It's just for fun. It's not really necessary. One quick note on casters here, we are going to be making use of the mages, specifically for ice blocks, at a later time. They're also fantastic for suppression room. Mages are definitely the most useful, I would say, aside from warriors, for the suppression room. Alright, so we're at 24 eggs, so 6 eggs to go, and then we will collapse into the middle here. So while we're waiting, a note on consumables. We pretty much bring every consumable under the sun, depending on the class. I do have an elemental sharpening stone already sharpened on my weapon. Did all this beforehand. Now I eat the Silithus food before we start this. However, later on I will be popping the Argent Dawn food instead, the Blessed Sun fruit. And the reason for that is because it's instant. We're not stopping for 10 seconds just to rebuff, and so it's just better to be able to get that less strength from the Blessed Sun fruit. It gives less strength, but because it's instant, it keeps the momentum going. We don't have to hold the raid up for any amount of time. Alright, so the reason I came over here to help is because we were about to collapse into the middle anyway. One other thing that I think a lot of guilds don't necessarily do unless you're really aggressive with these speedrun clear times. All the melee here have a PvP trinket on. And the reason for that is, I'm gonna actually get out of this real quick. So the reason for that is because sometimes if you don't kill him quickly enough, Razorgore will war stomp. And when he war stomps, that's 5 seconds of everyone that got hit by it just doing nothing. So the PvP trinket is literally only used for Razorgore, and it's just to potentially circumvent that stun from happening. And this, of course, is before, because item rack was real buggy on me, so some of the gear that I swapped here, I actually swapped manually. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore, but yeah, item rack was giving me some issues for a little while. You'll notice something interesting here. We turn Razorgore to the side a bit. We do not face him directly forward. I'm going to go ahead and just pause here for a second. So the reason we do that, the reason we face him out this way, instead of going in and facing him toward the center here, is because our tank needs to be able to get his first attack ASAP. So in this case, Koopa is the tank. He's up here, good old Koopa. So Koopa needs to be able to bloodthirst this guy as quickly as possible. He basically just pops everything on this guy. He gets as much damage as possible on him and gets the threat going so that we can just nuke this boss down. If the boss is facing center, there's a very good chance that he's going to get parried because he doesn't want to stand over here where the raid is. He wants to stand right here about. Like right there. Sorry for that horrible, horrible circle. But he wants to stand like right about here. You can actually see him right there. That's Koopa. So the reason he stands there is so that he can get the bloodthirst and then also be in position to just tank the boss for the rest of the encounter. So you'll notice here that I don't pop any cooldowns. Anybody with a cooldown of more than like 30 seconds basically is not using any cooldowns. And so the boss, of course, melts. We have very, very high damage. I'm actually very proud of Rampage. I tend to wait a second on this fight just because I have come close to pulling aggro before when I go all out right at the first frame. All right, boss is down. Now, one thing that we do here, totally optional, but this is for speed running specifically. You'll notice I popped right here. I actually popped a swiftness potion. Everybody in the guild does it, except for people that have some kind of passive movement buff that can keep up. And this is just to get us into the next room ASAP. I checked my gear there because I swapped my gear. I wanted to make sure item rack was not messing with me. And so I swapped on the diamond flask heal set, specifically for this pull. This is where we pop our cooldowns. Not recklessness, but everything else. And so this includes every class. Every class with a cooldown that, you know, is like 3 to 5 minutes long pops cooldowns here so that we can absolutely decimate these guys. You can see us sappering. You notice we barely took any damage in comparison with what you might expect. And that is just because we're all popping cooldowns. And the reason for that is because, simply put, this right here, this buff is super, super strong. So it's the essence of the red, which you probably know about. Some guilds probably haven't memorized what it actually does. It's the reason that your rage instantly fills, your mana is instantly filled. This literally allows your casters to just spam whatever they want to their heart's desire. They never have to worry about anything. In terms of melee, this also allows you to spam your abilities all the time. You never have to worry about like execute putting you out of rage at a bad time. You can just do whatever you want here. So we move along very quickly. This is an old raid, of course, so this is not the optimized route for a cutting edge time. But you'll notice we pulled a lot of extra mobs here. This is just because most of them are very easily killed. Anyone that's done BWL knows the whelps. We only slow down, of course, when everyone starts getting low. You can see on the left here, people are starting to actually go down to 50% HP or below. Oh yeah, quick note earlier, somebody traded me a health stone. Often that happens with the melee because we're the ones in the thick of it. We're getting hit by more than the ranged. And so sometimes that health stone can actually save us. All right, so far so good with the suppression traps. Suppression traps, I would say, are the bread and butter of a speed run. If you get those down really well, you'll see we did not, and it actually cost us a lot more time than you might expect. So suppression traps with rogues, it's always a good idea. Let me just pause this for a second. So you'll notice we've got multiple people here heading up to the suppression traps. Now, this was the mistake we made this night. It would have been better if they had already been there taking care of each of these traps as we start approaching. Now, of course, I'm not blaming them by any means. This was the first time I believe we actually executed this strategy. But it did cost us because we got the suppression traps down late toward the end, which, of course, I am suppressed, means I'm not doing much damage, I'm moving slowly, can't get to my target as quickly, which costs us time with Essence of the Red, and thus overall slows down the entire run substantially, because this is not just happening to me, it's happening to most of the raid. So if there was any little bit of advice for the suppression room that I was to give, ooh, we got suppressed again here, forgot about this one. don't do anything unnecessary. I would say don't worry about your personal DPS necessarily. Worry about surviving. Worry about accomplishing your individual role first. So if you're a rogue, get on those suppression traps, take them down as quickly as you can. If you're another melee DPS, don't worry so much about your cleave damage necessarily while hatchers are up. If you have 2 hatchers up, don't focus on cleaving the whelps and padding the meters. Just single target the priority target down first, then worry about the AoE. You're going to have other people using like sappers and grenades and everything. Your AoE will be covered. You won't have to worry about it. Yikes, we got suppressed here again. This is definitely a bit of a sloppy suppression room. All right, so we pull the boss immediately, partly to make up for time, but also because we actually had a lot of rage still from the Essence of the Red, a lot of mana, nobody was low. You'll notice where we're positioned. I kind of have my camera turned at an awkward, really awkward spot, so I tried to turn it on purpose here just to actually see what's happening. We do this for a reason. Now, Koopa's over there in the corner. The boss, of course, is going to knock us back. Koopa's right here tanking him, right where he needs to be. When the boss knocks us back, we won't be going anywhere. We might go up in the air. Like, some of us do go up here, but we won't be staying up there. Now, we also make sure to position ourselves just enough behind him to avoid parry hasting. Very important with this boss not to stand in front of him, because you can actually get even a well-geared tank killed doing that. Constant parry haste will mean the tank's taking double or even triple damage bursts from his abilities. So we immediately pull this group here, and you'll notice melee do not waste any time. We don't care about the bombs. We run right in and meet everybody right here. Now this is, of course, because the most of the raid is actually throwing grenades here, dynamite. As do most of the melee. I made a personal mistake here, and I did not FAP until the mob got into the room, the Draconid here. The Wyrmguard Draconids really kind of suck, because they do a really wide radius stomp. Everyone knows about it, of course, but fapping allows you to effectively bypass it. This is also where we use some of our cooldowns. Now, eventually we decided to save our cooldowns for Fire Maw. I would say either way works here. If you kill these faster, that's great. If you kill Fire Maw faster, that's also good. This is something that we did for this particular run that we've basically tried to do each time. We base our pace at where Fire Maw is. And so because Fire Maw's all the way over there, around that corner, here he comes, we just went front and center, avoided the side packs in this room, went straight for Fire Maw. If you have high enough damage, this is actually perfectly viable, because it enables you to burn Fire Maw before he's able to kill you. Now, we do have a fire resistance buff, thankfully. We have the fire resistance buff from Ubers, but that's basically all the fire resistance we use aside from Shaman Totems. And you'll notice the boss just melts. We pop all our cooldowns early on him in order to get him in execute range as quickly as possible. Just excellent. This was a beautiful kill. Now, this is where we're going to be using mages. Let me go ahead and get off of this real quick. So I'm using a little pen, something called Epic Pen. It's a program I'm not used to using, so forgive me for being a little slow with the swaps. So this is a scenario in which we actually separate our raid into individual groups and assign these groups to either bomb this pack or the one coming up or the one after that. We bounce back and forth between the assigned groups. One mage, of course, goes in and ice blocks right here. The reason we do this is because while everyone else remains out of range, so we don't want to be going this close. We want to be back here. The reason you want to stay back here is because this will mean that you're not in combat yet. Only this guy is, only the mage. And what that effectively means is all the mobs will only target him. Because he's immune to damage, they will run into him since they can't do anything else. And that's, of course, you'll see here. Whoopsie-daisy. You'll see us go ahead and bombard them now. And then we just run right in. I had extra oils of immolation brought specifically for these packs, so I actually use more oil of immolation on these just to kill everything as quickly as humanly possible. So that ice block is crucial. We don't get paladins on Horde side, as you all know. And so this is just fantastic for getting mobs grouped up. And I would actually recommend this for anyone looking to clear Blackwing Lair, anyone that might be having trouble with it. Maybe new guilds are looking to clear it, or maybe you're still having trouble with some pulls, some trash pulls, some boss encounters. Ice block pulling is actually really, really great. It allows everything to get nice and grouped up so that you can AoE burst everything down. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm tabbing through each target and checking the sunders. If the sunders are not at 5, I sunder it till it's at 5. Then I move on to the next target. And I just keep doing that. Sometimes people slack on the sunders, it's true. And it's just because it's annoying to have to tab through and sunder everything, but it's important. So essentially I'm just taking it upon myself to do that very thing. So I moved back there a little bit because a lot of the dynamites were being cast there. We try to prioritize warlocks with these groups. So right there, that's a warlock going down last. One of the reasons that the spellbinders sometimes die first is because we'll notice they're casting flame strikes, they're CCing people, and they happen to be closer than the warlock is, so we'll just move on to them first. Okay, Death Talon Overseer going down. We're gonna do the next ice block. All right, you notice like I'm inching up, I'm not running in right away, and that's just because I want to avoid these guys moving out of position. Nasty flame strike got off there. Alright, so while this is dying, yeah, mage is definitely great to bring them. I would actually love to have brought another couple of warlocks. I feel like warlocks are undervalued in today's day and age, but they're very capable of doing excessive levels of damage if you allow them to. Great for their debuffs as well, just their supportive debuffs. Now, we pull these guys right away, specifically just to save time. I fapped in the right time. Now, you'll notice I did something really bad here. Never do this. We had just come up with this strategy of using target dummies on the Wyrm guards here. And because I forgot to set it to a keybind, I was like, oh no, what do I do? Well, I'll just go to my bag and cast it. So when it was my turn to use it, I cast this. And you will notice right here, just take a look. You'll notice that this thing gets targeted a lot. Like constantly. Basically what target dummies do, for those who do not know, is they AoE taunt everything around them like every couple seconds. And it works on bosses, and it works, well, some bosses, and it works on the Wyrm guards here. So you will notice the Wyrm guards turning constantly. Just look at that. Look at all these dummies right here dying. Now that might not seem like much, but the reason this is important is because not only are they absorbing hits that other people might be taking, but they also absorb the little spinny debuff that they put. So the Wyrm guards will target somebody, and whoever they are currently targeting, meaning usually the tank, will get a spin debuff placed on them that causes them to do friendly fire damage to anyone around them. This is usually what causes people to die on those trash pulls. What the dummy does is it absorbs that, and then it dies a second later because it's still taunting. And so basically no damage ever goes out from the whirlwind. Very powerful stuff. I honestly was mind blown when we found out about that. All right, so Ebon Rock. We do something a little different with Ebon Rock. Most guilds fight him up at the top of the ramp or pull him to the bottom. We decided to do something totally insane, but really cool, and we just pull both bosses right here. We target Ebon Rock first, of course, because he was already targeted. No reason to swap to the other boss and start focusing him. We do, however, cleave passively onto this guy. We don't focus cleave over single target, but we weave it in. So I'm cleaving. You can actually see my abilities down there. I'm weaving in cleave and whirlwind whenever I can, just to get the extra damage up. We also use cooldowns. Now, one thing that's tricky about this particular double pull here, should you attempt to try it, if you're familiar with Wing Buffet, if you've tanked these fights before, you know that Wing Buffet will essentially, and you'll see it happen multiple times, whoever's currently in front of him when he does a Wing Buffet, it'll knock them very far away. Usually you'll see somebody fly off to the side here, and that's just one of the tanks taunting, or one of the DPS taunting. Usually a DPS will just say, you know, I'll taunt this, and taunts it as it's about to go off. Now, if I'm not mistaken, something kind of bad happens here. I'm not going to say what it is. Forget if this is the run that this happens on. Okay, it looks like it looks like it didn't happen. We're okay. There was one run where the boss turned ever so slightly toward the melee, and it didn't breathe on us. That's probably what you were thinking I was going to say, but it did Wing Buffet and knocked us across the room. And so, unfortunately, because of how the ramp is, I couldn't intercept back, so we all had to run back in the normal way, and it cost us several seconds. Fantastic, fantastic. Ooh, somebody actually got hit at the last second there. So this is something important that we do. You don't have to do this if you're just looking to clear quickly, but if you're looking for a cutting edge time, this is actually something I recommend. You'll notice the Wyrm guards aren't here. If you were watching, you'll know it's because we pulled them already. One person pulls them, and you can actually see on the minimap here, one person's far away from the raid. It's a rogue. And so what they do is they pull them, run away. I'm just turning back to see where they are. And then they vanish. And so in this case, it was Skrill, if I'm not mistaken, that did it. All right, so I put on my roids there because no need for survival anymore. We're focusing on pure damage. Now, those Weird Guards reset back to their initial position, so you have to be careful if you do that, not to go back over there where they were. One note on Chromagus. I don't recall if we actually had the opportunity to sapper here, but whenever he's vulnerable to fire, we always sapper. It does a lot of extra damage, and it's just great for that little bit of burst, killing him all the faster. Note on melee, by the way, for this fight. You'll notice how far back I'm standing. Like, I'm standing right here. Standing really far away. I can actually go a little bit further away and still hit him. The hitbox of Chromagus is gigantic, and his breath gets cut off, I notice, about here. Like, once I get beyond this, away from his head, he will no longer be breathing on me. So what I try to do is inch my way over to this point, this little line here, as close as I can while being able to DPS, and then I wait till the last second when he actually starts casting. I run like 2 steps over here, I'm all good, I run 2 steps back. Saves a lot of time and enables you to do a lot more damage. So I, of course, was really safe about this, ran a couple steps into the corner instead of just stopping at the line. Right, Dirt Merchant pulled at that point, but that's okay, because I believe he was the second tank for this, so that's all right. And of course, we were not expecting a second breath, so I got nice and close. There was no reason to inch back at that point. And in fact, I don't know if we actually get another breath. I might have to run here. Yeah, we do. We do get another breath. So yeah, you'll notice the cast goes off before I even start moving. Like, the actual cast begins. You have just enough time to get into that corner if you position him correctly. And we drag him over here, of course, to save time for the travel to Nefarian. If you ever notice me opening my gear, by the way, it's just making sure, because I hit an item rack button, I'm just making sure it swapped correctly and it didn't, you know, screw me over. There was one time where, just as an example, I put on my Oni cloak with item rack and it took the Oni cloak off for some reason. I don't know why, but it killed me. Now, these Weird Guards we pull here, and if I'm not mistaken, we actually pulled a little early. But these target dummies were amazing. We just start throwing them down again. They constantly taunt. The Weird Guards just do nothing to us. They maybe get 1 or 2 hits on the raid each, and the rest of the time they're focusing on the target dummies. We take almost no damage. Oh boy. Oh boy, poor Rareth. Just got focused there for a second. We went ahead and sappered to finish things off here. This, of course, allows us to get everything grouped up and then cleave and AoE them down. Really, really awesome. Now, of course, I was in the group that was assigned to the further ditch for these spawn points, so we just push them all the way back, and business as usual. By the way, if you notice the video is really long, it's because I recorded this and Molten Core. I could do a Molten Core video as well, but I figured I would just do Blackwing Lair for this one. So, a sort of revisit to the topic. One of the reasons that our warriors, you'll notice almost everybody is wearing rank 13 gear. Not everybody went to rank 14. A lot of people did, though. I think almost every warrior in the guild, in both Raid 1 and 2, went at least to rank 10. And I would say 2/3 went to rank 13. And it's specifically because the armor, while it is not the best DPS armor in the game, it has so many stats on it that you just get so much health. And it's not far behind in terms of damage either. So you don't lose much damage, but you gain a metric ton of health, and it just enables you to do some crazy things. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead here. Oh, there we go. Nefarian's landing. Koopa, of course, is over there right in the front, picking up Nef. He faces him out there. We, of course, place a totem. We place a Tremor totem. Well, this is the Wind Fury totem, but we place a Tremor totem somewhat close. I believe it's actually barely off screen, just in range to you know, pick it up. In case Koopa does get feared at all, it'll break it immediately. All right, not too much to talk about in terms of Nefarian. One thing I will say is, you know, watch your threat here, definitely. If you ever pull threat, it can easily wipe your raid. And you definitely want to make sure that your tank is well taken care of. Just don't let him die. don't let him get feared. Koopa is dual wield tanking, but I would say depending on how confident you are with your healers, it might be a good idea to go in sword and board, because Nefarian does in fact hit kind of hard. Of course, you'll see him melting here, and this is also the point where we pop any remaining cooldowns that we've got. And when the ads spawn, we completely ignore them. We just finish Nef off, and then we sapper the ads as they run by. And this is just amazing. It never gets old seeing all these things melt. I remember back in the day, these took a long time to kill. So that's it. That's pretty much the entirety of the speed run. So as a quick, I guess, note to go out on, it's really important to get your world buffs for something like this, but if you're say, just looking to improve your raid's execution on individual encounters, I would say focus more on how we position things. We didn't just position them in order to make the speed run easier. We position them because it makes the fight safer. It enables DPS to get into position and do the damage faster. And in terms of, like, Koopa dual-wield tanking as a tank, I'm not going over gear here, really. But one of the reasons he does that is to get more threat, which means more damage can be done all the quicker. And the way I like to think about it is, you can focus on not dying, you can focus on taking less damage as a tank or, you know, in any given scenario. But the faster it dies, the less damage it will do. And as a result, by doing more threat and taking more damage and enabling our DPS to just completely go 100%, it effectively allows us to kill the boss so quickly that it doesn't have time to become much of a threat. It does some damage, sure, but it doesn't have time to exhaust healer mana. It doesn't have time to start dealing the situational damage to the raid. It just does not have time to do all of that. And so what we do here at the end of the raid, this is just a little bit extra. We clear the remaining groups that we did not kill before. The reason being we could get trash drops, and some people still need stuff from here. So it's a good idea. No reason not to get the extra loot here. Drives me crazy when I see Battle Shout. Whenever I look back and don't see myself hitting Battle Shout right away, it drives me nuts. Once again, this is where I start tabbing through, making sure everything's sundered. So I suppose the easiest thing to say on a class-by-class basis, I don't know too much about every single class, but you'll notice, like, we only have one druid. We only need one. You'll notice we brought a very melee-heavy comp. Again, that's because melee just doesn't have the downtime that mana users have to worry about. You see people at 50% mana, 30% mana. Melee don't have to worry about that. We can just, as long as we're not about to die, we can run in and continue DPSing. And so debuffs are definitely a big deal for warriors. Make sure you are sundering if you have not been. For those of you worried that Sunder will pull threat, pull aggro off your tank, if your tank is decently geared and knows what they're doing, I'm not going to use words like good or bad. That's not why we're here. But if your tank knows what they're doing, and they have experience doing it, they will not lose threat. Bloodthirst, for example, pulls far more threat per cast than Sunder Armor ever can. Especially if you get a crit on it, Bloodthirst will pull a ton of threat. And so, if you open with a Sunder, and your tank gets like a Bloodthirst crit, there's no way you are pulling off them in that first moment. At that point, just, you know, check the threat meter. If you happen to get close, slow down a little bit. Sunder is definitely important, though, because, again, it gets the 5 stack up there sooner, the boss dies faster, it doesn't get to do as much damage, you can move on to the next encounter. It's just cheers all around. Good stuff all around. A note on priests, pre-shielding is a big thing. You're definitely going to want to practice pre-shielding if you're going to try to improve your execution of the entire raid and lower that time. Rogues, of course, I think are a little self-explanatory other than the suppression room. You know, do your jobs, do your roles. Don't worry about damage in the suppression room if you're a rogue. If you are assigned to take out the suppression traps, focus on that. Don't worry about damage. If you have to sit there and do nothing but worry about the traps, you are doing your job. Nobody should ever be upset with you about that. And of course, we sapper again here. We don't have the infinite rage, infinite mana buff anymore, but at this point, it's like, who cares? As long as we keep our world buffs, it doesn't matter if we take extra damage. And that is Blackwing Lair. Guess I can go over a few more classes before we end things here. Shaman, chain heals. big deal. I don't think I really have to comment too much on Shaman. Totem twisting, though, is actually really powerful in scenarios like this where you're speeding through. For those who don't know what totem twisting is, it essentially means that you are throwing down one type of totem to get the benefit out, and then throwing down another type of totem of that same totem type. So, for example, Wind Fury. Throwing down Wind Fury and throwing down the Agility totem, Grace of Air. Throwing those two totems down, they take up the same totem slot. But if you throw down Wind Fury, it enchants the weapon every few seconds of everyone in your group that's in range. So that enables you to put down, like you'll notice it counts down. Throwing down Wind Fury, it buffs me for 10 seconds, which means you can throw it down, it'll buff me, and then you can throw down the Agility totem, Grace of Air, right after that. And that enables you to keep Wind Fury up at all times while also getting the Agility buff to everyone around you. Very powerful stuff. So Shaman, I would say practice totem twisting. And this is, of course, partially for preparing for AQ, because this AQ is definitely a lot harder than BWL in terms of the overall difficulty of each individual boss and even some of the trash. So yeah, this is actually my first BWL video. If there's anything I missed, leave something in the comments for me. I will get right on it. I didn't do any kind of like editing for this because I didn't feel that was necessary. Now the purpose of this video, once again, is just to help people through examples shown to improve their overall clear times or improve their individual raids, their individual boss execution of their raid. Was looking for the wording there. So I hope this helped somebody out there. If anybody has any questions, you know, you don't have to leave a comment in YouTube. You can also seek me out in game. You can seek out Discord. You can seek me out on Twitch, anywhere you want. And so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope this helped anybody out there improve their times. Have a great one, and I will see you all in the next video. The next one I plan on doing is either Molten Core or AQ, whichever comes first. AQ, of course, is coming out, well, in about 2 weeks, because it's not going to be released on the first week. So once again, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great one, and I will see you all next time.